Hey, what's up everybody, and welcome back to Newstos. So, Xbox, they're still trying to get that Activision Blizzard acquisition through regulations, but before that's even been completed, we're already starting to hear talks about Microsoft's next potential target, which could be even bigger than Activision Blizzard. Is there a possibility that Microsoft and Netflix could join together? Well, at least one analyst believes that that could be the case, and that Netflix is indeed setting themselves up for this scenario, which would have a major, and I mean a major impact on Xbox. So yeah, there's definitely a lot to go over there, so we'll dive into that a little later on today. Also, Nintendo gave us some new details on the 3DS and Wii U eShop closures. Unfortunately, yeah, that's still a thing, so we'll talk about that one as well. To start things off today, though, we do have a potential leak to go over, this time being for Sonic Frontiers. This is actually coming directly from the Steam database, which reveals that Sonic Frontiers was recently updated on Steam, including a release date. Now, this could possibly just be a placeholder, you can't exactly rule that out just yet, but the release date was indeed changed to November 8th of 2022. Of course, we always knew that their plan was to release Sonic Frontiers this holiday, but if this is in fact true, that means that Sonic Frontiers will release on the exact same day as Skull and Bones, and only one day before God of War Ragnarok. Yeah, I'm really not sure if this would be the smart direction for Sega to take. Now, I do understand that Sonic appeals to different demographics, but even then, I don't particularly like when publishers kind of release all of their big games on top of one another. There is some overlap regardless of what demographic and platform they release on, so I do hope that this release date turns out to be false. With that said, a few other details that the Steam database unveiled was that they added Steam achievements, it will have full controller support as to be expected, and it does appear to have Denuvo as an anti-tamper technology, which, probably won't exactly go over too well with fans. Denuvo does have a little bit of a reputation for affecting performance in games. It has happened in the past, so it's definitely not a fan favorite per se. Now, we'll still have to kind of wait and see how all of this turns out, but I do continue to remain very hopeful for Sonic Frontiers. In many ways, this marks a new chapter for Sonic as a franchise being an open world style game, and I do hope it turns out to be good. I'm not 100% sold on it just yet, but I do remain very hopeful. Moving on though, PlatinumGames, the studio behind Nier Automata, Astral Chain, and the upcoming Bayonetta 3, yes, just a fantastic overall studio, well, they just hired a Nintendo veteran, Takao Yamane, which worked with Nintendo for over 27 years, holding several high-level positions. PlatinumGames just hired him as their new vice president and chief business officer in the hopes to quote-unquote significantly change the company in a new era of Platinum Games. This was stated in a teaser video for an upcoming Famitsu interview, so I'm sure we'll hear a lot more about this new era of Platinum Games sometime here soon. But I will say that this is quite an interesting statement to make. Platinum Games, of course, is most well known for their expertise on action games, but this statement does kind of hint that they might want to branch out going forward. I've also seen a lot of speculation online that this new direction might include a Nintendo acquisition, though I really don't look at this announcement quite that way. I mean, yes, they're hiring a Nintendo veteran and everything, and they do have a good relationship with one another, developing multiple exclusive titles, including Astral Chain, and they, of course, are also working on Bayonetta 3. But I feel like it's a big jump to just assume that Nintendo is going to acquire them solely based on this alone. In theory, I think that it makes sense and would be smart for both companies, as they do work well together, but I don't think that there's enough evidence here to necessarily support that assumption. Maybe sometime in the future, but I feel like this kind of leans into Platinum Games just being more ambitious as of recent years. They did get that big investment from Tencent, which has given them the freedom to develop several games independently, and they do seem to have an ambition to try new things like Soul Cresta, as an example. I just hope that whatever this new era of Platinum Games ends up being, I do hope that they continue to make great single-player games rather than them changing their focus to live service games. We've already seen them do something like that with Babylon's Fall, which wasn't exactly a smashing success for them, but I guess we'll hear more about this new direction that they're taking in the upcoming Famitsu interview. If anything interesting comes from that, I, of course, will let you all know. Let's go and talk about Xbox though, or to be more precise, we needed to talk about Microsoft. Now, as of this moment, they are going through regulations to fully acquire Activision Blizzard for nearly $70 billion, but once that's clear, this puts Microsoft back in position to look for more acquisitions. Just right now, they kind of have their hands tied with all that, but after that, they'll start to get more active again, and according to one analyst, they claim that one possible target might be Netflix. Now, this would have major implications on not only the tech industry as a whole, but it could also significantly impact the future of Xbox, exposing them to millions upon millions of more fans with their subscriptions and their IP alike. We'll kind of get more into that here in just a moment, but first, let's kind of take a look at where all of this is coming from. You can actually take a look over here, posted up by Windows Central, where it says, "Indeed, Microsoft is actually teaming up with Netflix per an announcement a couple of days ago. For Netflix's new, more affordable ad-supported streaming tier, Microsoft was picked as the exclusive ad marketplace and technology partner for the new service. It'll be another feather in the cap of Microsoft's growing ads business, which is no slouch at $10 billion in revenue last year, although it pales in comparison to the likes of Google, up over $160 billion for the same period." In any case, one analyst speaking to Yahoo Finance claimed that the partnership betrayed a possible longer-term goal, namely an exit for Netflix, which has been struggling to diversify its revenue streams and find new growth as of late. A decline in subscription saw a mass investor exodus over the past year, with Netflix's share price taking an absolute battering from its peak of 690 points all the way down to 177 points today. Yeah, that's not very good. Laura Martin, Needham senior analyst, had this to say about the partnership. "It could be that Netflix is looking for an exit. Netflix is trying to get closer to Microsoft in hopes that after Microsoft digests its Activision acquisition, it turns and buys Netflix next." Yeah, okay, so there's a lot to go over here, and while it's easy to kind of just brush this off thinking that it won't ever happen, there are some reasons to believe that it could possibly happen. In some ways, Microsoft and Netflix joining together would actually make sense for each other. As mentioned in the article itself, Netflix has been on the decline. They're facing steeper competition than they've ever faced, with Disney, HBO, Amazon, etc., all having their own streaming services, taking away content from Netflix. So with that decline, maybe they would be more willing to bring in Microsoft, which not only could help them with ad revenue, again, as mentioned in the article, but let's not forget that Netflix also, they do have an interest in gaming as well. They do actually have games on Netflix, and while a lot of these are more mobile style of games, they did acquire Night School Studios, who works on Oxenfree. So Netflix does have a commitment to gaming there, which Microsoft excels in with Xbox. Now, interestingly enough, this also equally leans into Microsoft's strategy for Xbox. One thing that they've been doing is that they've been putting a lot of resources into their cloud gaming initiative. We've seen this with Xbox Game Pass and most recently with Samsung's TVs. Microsoft wants Xbox to be easily accessible, and that's where that cloud gaming initiative comes in. So in that regard, Netflix and Xbox are actually the perfect partners. They could conjoin Xbox Game Pass with Netflix, making all of their available cloud-based games available on Netflix without the need of a console. That would be just like this huge shortcut for Xbox to just be in the household of millions upon millions of fans out there, all with a subscription. Netflix reportedly has more than 200 million subscribers, so that is a potentially massive jump in exposure for Xbox games. Something else that this would do is that it would give Xbox several popular Netflix IPs such as Stranger Things and Umbrella Academy. Xbox would have the ability to make their own AAA Stranger Things game, which again, I think this kind of leans into Netflix strategy. They are taking gaming very serious right now, and you can kind of say the same thing vice versa for Xbox IP. If you've been paying attention to the game industry as of late, a lot of these companies, they have been trying to expand by bringing their IP to a wider audience. There's been a lot of movie and show game related adaptations in recent years. In fact, Microsoft just had the Halo TV show, and a new Grounded animated series just got announced as well. And I'm sure Microsoft would like to do that with some of their other IP on top of that. And if they own Netflix, that would give them the resources to do just that. I mean, last generation, they tried to build Xbox Entertainment Studios for their own TV and movie-related studio. That didn't exactly work out for them, and well, they ended up closing them. So they have shown some interest in things like this in the past, and I think Netflix would be a huge opportunity for Microsoft to really enter that entertainment business in a whole new way. And it does lean into their strategy of subscription services. So as you're kind of seeing, there are a lot of ways that Microsoft could benefit Netflix and Netflix could benefit Microsoft. It does seem like the partnership would work out very well for both of them. So I think at the very least, Netflix and Microsoft make sense in terms of an aligned strategy, and they would make for perfect partners. With that said, will it actually happen? That right there is the big question. And well, I think it really just all kind of depends on whether or not Netflix would actually want to sell. If they did, well, really there's only a few companies out there that could afford them. Microsoft, of course, being one of them. And that list kind of narrows down even further when you start to realize that a lot of these companies that can afford them already, well, they already have their own streaming services such as Amazon and then Google. So do I think that it's possible? Yes, I do think that it's possible. Will it actually happen? That's a little bit of a different story. We'll kind of see how all this plays out. I mean, this is just one analyst for the time being, and when you're talking about a massive acquisition like this that could be even more expensive than Activision Blizzard, yeah, there's a lot of questions out there. But let me know what you all think about this, though. Would you like to see Microsoft acquire Netflix, and do you think that it will actually happen? Let me know in the comments below. Now, we do also have some Nintendo-related news as they gave us some additional details about the upcoming 3DS and Wii U eShop closures. Unfortunately, we are nearing the end of these digital storefronts, and now we do have an exact date as to when you'll no longer be able to purchase content from either of these stores. They did confirm that on August 29th, it will no longer be possible to use Nintendo eShop cards to add funds to an account on the Nintendo eShop for the Wii U or the 3DS. However, and this is very important, even though you can't directly add funds on the 3DS or Wii U, if you've linked your Nintendo Network ID, you'll still be able to add funds through its shared wallet. That means that you can still add funds to the Switch, as an example, and because it's a Nintendo Network ID, those funds are shared with the 3DS and the Wii U as long as it's linked. So that's kind of good news, I suppose. It does at the very least extend the life of these stores just a little bit longer. But that will officially end on March 27th of 2023, marking the end of any type of purchases. Now, interestingly enough, for whatever reason, Fire Emblem Fates, that actually ends a month before that. I'm not really sure why, but yes, this is sadly the end of an era. I really don't like this trend of these digital storefronts disappearing, as there are several digital-only games that will just disappear forever. I do understand that it's bound to happen eventually, but this definitely brings game preservation to the forefront, as well as what exactly happens to your purchases in the future when these companies inevitably decide to shut down their servers completely. Those are absolutely major concerns, and I think with Nintendo shutting these storefronts down, those concerns are only going to be amplified from this point forward. I mean, here in recent years, there's been a lot of this type of stuff happening. I mean, even a week or so back, there was a story going around that of fans actually purchasing content. They were purchasing movies on PlayStation, and because of some type of licensing dispute or something like that, fans who purchased movie-related content in the past were just being stripped away of that content regardless of their purchase. So again, this is a major concern going forward with the rise of digital content. Nonetheless, if you're still looking to purchase any digital games on the 3DS or Wii U, the clock is ticking, and there are some notable games that you can pick up. Some games that are quite expensive physically, such as Monster Hunter Stories, Dragon Quest VII, and the Shin Megami Tensei games, are more affordable digitally. And then, of course, you have the virtual console games and digital exclusives like Box Boy. So if you want any of those games, definitely pick them up before you can't get them anymore. Again, being March 27th of 2023. Actually, speaking of Nintendo though, something very curious is happening over there as Camelot just updated their official website to include Golden Sun artwork. Now, what this means is kind of up to interpretation, and it might mean, well, absolutely nothing. There's no guarantee here. But you know, Golden Sun is a beloved dormant JRPG franchise that we haven't seen since 2010 with the release of Dark Dawn on the Nintendo DS. So fans have been just begging for this franchise to return for quite a while, and now just out of the blue here, Camelot suddenly, at the very least, I mean, they're giving the franchise some recognition. Again, though, this could mean absolutely nothing, but the fact that they're giving Golden Sun any type of recognition certainly has fans just a little hopeful for a new entry. I guess a little hope is better than no hope, right? So, you can kind of look at it that way. The way I kind of look at this, though, is that I'm not necessarily sure if we'll get a brand new Golden Sun game anytime soon, but there has been some rumors out there, or even evidence, that Nintendo is looking to add more emulators to Switch Online, most notably the Game Boy Advance. So who knows? Golden Sun, that's a popular franchise on the Game Boy Advance, and maybe sometime in the near future we could see that GBA support after all, with, of course, Golden Sun. Let's go take a look at the poll of the day, though, and I wanted to know when you all first got into gaming. So I asked you all, what decade of consoles first got you into gaming? And as you can see here, the majority of you all started in the 90s, being 41%, then 28% of you all started in the 2000s, 22% of you all started in the 1980s or even earlier than that, 7% of you for the 2010s, and then only 1% of you all started here recently in the 2020s. So yes, a lot of you all have been playing games for a long time, and it was cool to look through the comments to see what console you all first started out with and some of the different memories that you had. I saw one person say that they woke up on Christmas morning to a Super Nintendo and the rest was history. And when you see all these different comments and all these different memories, it is quite nostalgic to kind of think about. We all might have started on different consoles or maybe even different years, but we all have that common passion. We love games, and it just brings us all together. It's such a great thing. I love gaming as a hobby. There's not a lot of hobbies out there that has this many passionate fans, and that's one of the things that I really love about gaming. And I think that it's quite telling that a lot of us out there, we're still playing games decades after when we first started. I think when you grew up in like the 80s or 90s, a lot of people kind of pass these off as just kids' toys, but they prove so much more than just that. I think gaming has proven to be very special, and it's really brought so many people across the world together, and it is just such an amazing and phenomenal hobby with so many passionate fans worldwide. I absolutely love this hobby, and I really can't understate that enough. Nonetheless, though, I actually started out in the 90s as well. The first game that I can actually remember playing is Duck Hunt on the original Nintendo. I was about 3 or 4 years old, so I don't remember too much about that. But most of my early gaming memories comes from consoles like the Nintendo 64, Game Boy, Game Boy Advance, the GameCube, all of those consoles. I just fell in love with gaming at a very early age, being in the 1990s. So I guess I pretty much grew up as a Nintendo kid, but as I got older, I started to play all these other platforms, PlayStation, Xbox, PC, or whatever. And, like I said, I feel like it's just such a special hobby, and regardless of the platform or when you started, it's amazing just how much gaming has affected people's lives, or how much it's even touched people's lives through decades. I mean, we're not talking about a few years, but some people have stuck with this hobby for decades on end, and I really, really do believe that just shows just how special of a community, how special of a hobby that we truly do have. I know that there's always going to be people out there that disagrees with each other, and, you might be a big fan of Xbox, or you might be a big fan of Nintendo, but we do have that common passion with each other, and I mean, we really do need to get rid of some of the toxicity within the community, but nonetheless, gaming truly is absolutely special. No doubt about it. Anyways, though, that's it for this episode, but if you liked the video, don't forget to bell notification and subscribe button for more content just like this. Also, if you'd like to support the channel through Patreon, thank you for making this content possible. Peace out.